Pastor Kevin, thanks for coming on. Really appreciate you taking the time to have a conversation with me. Would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself before we get started?
No problem. So am I am a pastor. I'm a pastor on staff at Transformation Church in Chino, California. The senior pastor is Pastor Jody Moore. So I run the worship and arts department as well over there that takes care of all the music, the media, and everything like that. Little bit of, I was called, my mother had a dream, well, not a dream, she had a vision. We were at church. I was 5 years old, and I was in front of we were in front of the steps, and I was with the pastor, and I was talking to him, and she had me in like a 20-piece suit, and he's holding my hand, and she really believed that the Lord had told her then that your son's going to be a pastor, that I've called him to be a pastor. And so for years I ran from it, because with pastor comes responsibility. It's not just about getting up and telling people this and blah, 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 blah. No, I really believe that, true pastors are shepherds, meaning we are there to service the people. And for the longest, I was cool with just giving the message and leaving. So call me an evangelist. I don't want to have it, so I ran from it because I didn't want the responsibility. But ultimately, I believe God had his way, and I submitted to the call because it's not about me. It's about why he put me here. So along with that, I am a musician, producer, singer, keyboardist, done stuff for film and television. I have music that's out, working with different artists. And so, yeah, I have a wonderful family, a wife, 4 children. One's going to Berklee School of Music, which I'm so proud of, my oldest. And so, yeah, and they're all musicians, and my beautiful wife, Stephanie, so we've been married for almost 17 years. And so, yeah, that's pretty much a little bit about me right there.
Cool. I'm an atheist, by which I mean I believe that naturalism and science best explain everything without the existence of a supernatural entity or supernatural realm. Could you tell me some of the reasons that you believe there are to believe there is such a being?
There's so many, but so, okay, let's go to the topic. So the topic was why you should, right? That's what, why I believe Tom should be a Christian, right? Believe in God. So let me find out a little bit more about you instead of, I just got the little one sentence of you. Can I have a little bit of your background and learn something about you? Because everybody's story is different. So if I can't presume I know why you believe what you believe or how you came to that or anything like that. So it'd be nice to just hear a little bit from you as well.
Sure. I was born in Dallas, Texas, moved to Minnesota when I was a kid. Been here ever since. I've had major depression and high function autism. I was diagnosed with those, had them all my life. My high function autism, people with autism have a special interest. That special interest is the only thing in the world that really matters to people with autism. And if you have it, you're happy. If you don't have it, you're depressed. And since I didn't have it, I was depressed for the vast majority of my life. And for me, it's a relationship with an Instagram model level attractiveness person. That's my inconvenient special interest.
So your special interest is, let me get this right, a relationship with an Instagram model type woman?
Yep, that is it. That's the only time I can be happy in life is if I'm in a relationship with someone that attractive. Unfortunately, it's a very inconvenient special interest.
It is.
It is. It's like I can only be happy if I'm a billionaire. Well, you're going to be miserable for a very long time.
Right.
So I had major depression, major depressive disorder, was diagnosed, had that up until I was about 30 when I got my first Instagram model girlfriend.
You got it?
And yep, I got one, and then I got dumped. So now I need another one. So if you got any connections, hook me up. Give me in the music
only one
community.
I know is my wife. Good. You can't have her, Tom. I'm sorry.
She's got friends, right? She can introduce me. Come on.
Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah. No. All right.
But yeah, so My parents were very religious, very Christian, and I was told to pray the depression away instead of pray the gay away, pray the depression away, and
Mm,
prayed every day, morning, night. Was very devout. Was like my connection or belief in Christianity was like all I had because I had nothing. There was nothing that mattered to me, and hoping that there was an all powerful, all loving being there to help me was the one thing I could like cling on to in my depression. But the help never came, and so I eventually lost the ability to believe there was an all loving being there.
mm,
Years later, I started to study philosophy and learned all the arguments and evidence and things. And that's when I started to identify with the label atheist because I
mhm,
got into the philosophy, learned about Hitchens, Harris, Dawkins, Dennett, started watching the debates. So I didn't know any of that back when I was a Christian, and when I stopped being a Christian, stopped believing in God, that was just a product of studying philosophy, and I think the philosophy is better for that reason.
mhm.
That's mostly my story. I've done lots of random junk to try and find the Instagram models. Very unsuccessful. It's very hard to find them. They're pretty rare, like rare
Yeah,
Pokemon.
and then if they're on Instagram, the likelihood of the reason they're on Instagram will probably go against a productive relationship. Let's just say, let's say that.
Well, I'm more into like open relationships, so I don't really have a need for the kinds of typical relationships in like Christian communities. So I'm okay with that. That doesn't bother
Oh,
me
fair
much.
enough. Fair enough. Fair enough. Fair enough. Fair enough. Fair enough. But what happens when they get older and the Instagram
Get a new one.
abilities? Fair enough. All right. So basically, what I'm hearing is that are you still in relationship with your parents?
Sort of.
Sort of.
Yeah, so we don't really talk much, but like we know each other.
Okay.
They recently lost their jobs, had to move back in with me, so I know them. We just don't talk much.
Oh wow. So you're taking care of them.
Sort of. Well,
Okay.
more they're taking care of me. They're like live-in butlers. I'm like, hey, mom, get some breakfast. You do the laundry. Okay, what do the dishes? Appreciate it.
Are they still Christian?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So basically, what I'm hearing is that in your lowest and deepest depression and everything, you were getting a bunch of fluff and you weren't getting a lot of practical help. Is that what I'm hearing?
I guess so. Um, I mean, because the goal was I needed to cure my depression, and it didn't happen. And so,
Right.
barring anything else, if my depression wasn't cured, I wasn't going to be religious very long. You
No, I
know,
understand. I'm sorry that man, I'm sorry that you went through that. I'm sorry that I mean you reached out to them and you reached out, I believe what you did you reach out to your church as well and all that
yep.
and nobody
Pastors.
and
Well, they
everything.
tried, but
Okay.
they didn't help with the depression because what I needed, and I didn't know at the time, what I needed was a relationship is the only, literally the only thing that could make me feel happy. And I just didn't know that at the time.
And you wouldn't know that without therapy, getting to the bottom of it. No one ever suggested that. That was
Oh, I
never.
went to lots of therapy, but it took a while to find an autism specialist to diagnose me. That didn't happen until my mid 20s.
Oh, so they
So,
didn't even know you were autistic
yeah.
until you found that out on your own. Is
Well,
what
they
I'm.
found the therapist guy who was a specialist, said, try this. I'm like, all right. My
Got
parents
you.
did.
Got you. One of the unfortunate, well, in my experience, it's been my experience. One of the unfortunate things about the church is that a lot of times we, pastors or leaders, try to double as therapists and counselors and stuff, and we're coming it from a which is it's not a bad thing, but it's an incomplete thing. We're coming from it from simply a faith thing, but that is incomplete. And I believe that every good and perfect gift come from God. I believe medicine comes from God, the study of medicine, the study of science. I believe these things come from God, and that God has placed in our communities licensed clinicians and therapists and doctors that we need to direct people and get them the help they need instead of trying to, you know, and nothing wrong with praying. Praying is awesome. But when God Himself has put other things there, that lets you know that the process is incomplete. And I'm sorry, brother, that you had to go through that. I'm glad that you're in a much better place now. I really am. I really am.
Thank you.
I really am. I really am. So as far as why I believe you should personally, I'll be more broad with it. Well, no, I'll talk about you. That still is. So here's where I believe that medicine can be incomplete, because I do believe that. So I am a pastor, so you're going to get scripture. Okay, it is what it is. Um, let me see. I'm getting a note. Seems like okay. We're good. The stream good. Okay. I believe that the Word of God says, "Any man that is in Christ is a new creature. Old things are passed away. Behold, all things are new." We're calling this a regeneration, and so I believe with therapy and finding out the different things and the roots and causes of what ails us, what besets us, is very good, and I believe. But the real transformation comes when we allow Christ into our lives and for Him to regenerate us and become that new creature. And you have the combination of the knowledge of what we've learned through medicine, and then you have His regenerating power. Because I really believe that you can be uh, in a place where you don't need the Instagram model. I believe you can. I believe it's possible, but I believe that's a working of what we know and what what we call the Holy Spirit in your life. So, from a personal point of view, if you desire, if you don't desire this, then it really doesn't matter. But if you do desire to not have that as an obstacle to your happiness, then I believe that's something that a belief in Jesus Christ would definitely remedy, now that you've already started the process, especially since you started the process of doing the work, with therapy and everything like that. So that's just my opinion based upon the limited information I have about you in that specific area. Now, from a broader sense, I believe that any and everybody should be followers of Jesus Christ, simply for the mere fact that it's true. Like it's like, uh, why should I believe the sun is in the sky? Because it's true. It's like, it's not rocket science, right? It's simple. To specifically answer the question, why should you be? It's because I believe that Jesus is truly God. I believe that. Because He's God and He's demonstrated Himself as God, and He has shown His love, that we have a duty to to respond to the love of our Creator, uh, um, and that it is the best thing for us, because we were designed by Him, and when we don't follow Him, we're not operating in the design that He has designed for us. We were made to be in relationship with Him and to worship Him, and I think that we are it's almost like having a fish out of water, pretty much. A fish is designed to swim in water. It operates in water. We were designed to be in relationship with Him. So we're not reaching our full potential unless we're in relationship with Him. Then we'll maximize everything that He's put in us. That's another reason I believe. I believe that it's the same. Now, here's what I think is pretty funny, but it may sound in what's the word? It may sound like I'm not being serious, but I am. So let's say, hypothetically speaking, Tom, that you're right and there is no God, right? Let's just say, hypothetically speaking, you're right. What consequence is that for me? Ultimately, there's no consequence, because we all end up in the same, at the end, I'm talking about death. I'm talking about we all end up being nothing. We all end up going into whatever, non-existence. There's really no consequence if there is no God. Am I assuming that? Or tell me, am I wrong about
Yeah, that would not be correct.
that?
But there's
Okay,
a few
okay.
things. So there's like 3 or 4 things I wanted to touch on there. So the first thing is that
Okay.
lots of Christians like to think that believing in Jesus will be able to change any psychological condition you have. That's just because they believe Jesus is all powerful. So obviously they're going to think that, but it's directly contradictory to all evidence of neurology. So neurology says like psychopaths, sociopaths, they lack the ability to feel empathy. Believing in Jesus isn't going to change that. It's just literally their brain cannot do those things. So the same thing applies to autism. Just saying you're going to give up your special interest is like saying cancer is going to disappear from your brain, or you're just going to stop being autistic or stop being dyslexic. That's not how the brain works. And so it's directly contradictory to all of the evidence we have in neurology that somehow believing in Jesus is going to fundamentally change the neurological structure of your brain. Um, so I think that saying that believing in Jesus could fundamentally change your brain structure is wrong. I don't think it's true that makes sense. It's like saying it could regrow a limb or whatever.
Well,
Just
I
not
didn't.
something that can happen.
Well, with all due respect, I didn't say that. And go back to if we can rewind the string when you did, I said can. So the reason I said can is specifically because I don't know what God's sovereign will for you. So here's an example. Paul in 2 Corinthians 12, he had what was called a thorn in his flesh. I'm pretty sure you're familiar with that. That he asked God to remove from him, and it was a physical ailment. And now you're talking about a writer of 2/3 of the New Testament, and God said, "My grace is sufficient for you, and in your weakness I am made stronger." So I said, "Can." So if you did believe in Jesus, it would still be up to His sovereign will whether He chose to heal or not. So again, it would be. Would it be a miracle? Yes, a neurological, but is a miracle too hard for an all-powerful God? No. So it's still His choice. He
Right,
so
but just to clarify, I think like um if there's a medicine and the medicine fails 99.99999% of the time,
mhm.
it's bad to put trust in the medicine, right? It's not a good medicine. It's not something you should really trust.
Okay.
And so if, for example, praying to God to have an arm regrown is not a very successful method. That's a very bad medicine. It's not really going to work. We have 0% evidence that arms regrow under any circumstances. And so praying to Jesus to regrow an arm is not a successful method, not something you should trust in. The same thing applies to changing physical brain structures. Um, Causing drastic physical changes to the body due to prayer is kind of like praying to a magic healer. It doesn't work that way. I know that Christians like to believe because God is all powerful, he's capable of doing these things. But if you treat it as if it's any kind of a medicine and you want to say that should we believe in this medicine or not, and we try it under certain conditions and it fails for X number of years and X number of times, there's at some point you should it's rational to say no, this doesn't work. It's like in any other context, if we tried a medicine, realized it failed every single time we tried it, never ever has it ever been successful in any trial condition, and we've tried them in tons and tons of times, it's rational to say, yeah, that doesn't work. That's not a
Yeah, no,
realistic.
that's rational, but that's you're presupposing that uh, that we're comparing apples to apples. When we're talking about matters of the heart and what we'll deem as neurological, I think what is the data and the statistics that because they're on the flip side is data and statistics that support that people have been, have had major issues dealt with once they have come to belief in Jesus. So just to talk about the arm regrowing, I got that. Look, I concede that. And I don't, and I'm not going to act, let me be very clear, I'm not going to act like I have all the answers here. And I don't have a need to be right. So let's be clear on that. Look, if it's wrong, if I can't, it is what it is. In the same vein, if we're talking about matters of the heart, so when we talk about like in your case, and I don't want to get personal because this is what you deal with, so I'm not trying to poo-poo it or make it like, oh, whatever, Tom, you gonna do. No, 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 this is me, this is meaningful to you. So but in your case, there are, in my experience, there have been a lot of people who have dealt with major heart issues we can call it neurological, and you've seen the change in their life. So what do you accredit that to? Even without the quote medicine from the physician, it's literally their relationship with Jesus Christ. So, I mean, what would you accredit that change to yourself?
Well, that's actually really common. That's actually a thing we see in autism. When someone doesn't have their special interest and they get their special interest,
Mhm.
that cures them of depression. And
No,
so,
what if they don't get their special
oh, no,
interest
no. So,
and they
so
still?
the reason I
Okay.
bring this up is that we know that people can have drastic emotional changes from adopting an ideology, finding a friend, finding a relationship, um, and those hobbies are random. There are lots of different things that can cause that, but that's all something we very well understand. The problem is if you then take it away and they go back to that state, could they just magically be cured? Well, no. The reason that becoming a Christian causes that change in personality is because it builds a social relationship, which releases oxytocin. And so for people who need that, that's what they're missing, it's going
Mhm.
to cause that kind of drastic solution. It's going to cure their depression. And so there are certain neurological structures where what they're missing is oxytocin or relationships. And they can get those relationships through Christianity, because Christianity, one of the most awesome things that it provides is community
Mhm.
and relationships through churches and friendships and people who you can share your values with, which is one of the most important things in human life. And so by converting to Christianity and adopting that ideology and building a community and joining a community, it can absolutely solve and have transformational emotional effects on people because it fulfills the emotional need that they're missing in their brain. But if what you're missing in your brain is not provided by that, it doesn't matter how much Christianity you're going to do, it's never going to solve it, just like an arm condition. So there are neurological effects Christianity has on the brain, specifically related to community and oxytocin. And if you're lacking in those respects, then becoming a Christian can solve those issues. If
Mhm.
what you're lacking is something else, then you're going to need a different thing to solve the issue. So for many people, they find Hinduism transformative. For many people, they find football transformative. For many people, they find aerospace engineering transformative.
Or
Um,
Herbalife.
yes, that's also the case. Yes.
No, I got
Uh, so yeah, so each individual has different neurological needs, and what it's required to make a transformative experience on their life is going to be contingent on whatever neurological chemical displacement they have. And so obviously Christianity can cause that because it causes, specifically related to oxytocin, lots of different kinds of connections, but it won't help you if that's not the connection you're missing. So it's not a fix all like a snake oil that'll just solve everything. It will solve certain specific things but won't help with other things. And mine is specifically related to dopamine and not as much oxytocin. And
that.
so for me, it doesn't matter how much Christianity I have; it's never going to change anything. For me, it's 100%. If I don't have a model, nothing else is going to cause the correct chemical structure in my brain without massive brain rewiring. And so it's essentially the same as saying regrow a limb or cure sociopathy, cure psychopathy, cure incurable diseases by complete restructuring of the brain. It's not quite the same.
Yeah, I look, I concede your point, but I don't concede the conclusion. I still, hold to the belief. I don't know why God does. I've actually asked that question. Why doesn't, like, Lord? Why don't you regrow limbs? You would make this a lot easier on us. You'd really make this a lot easier as if you would just, regrow a limb. Now we do see in Matthew where he put the ear back on to Malchus, but we don't see a whole bunch of accounts, like that. We see the withered hand, but literally an amputee. Why don't you do that? I don't know. I know that the word it says that his ways are not our ways, his thoughts are not our thoughts. In my limited understanding and in my finite brain, I would like things to be a little bit more easier because the points that you make are absolutely valid. It still does not take the conclusion away that if he chose to, he could. And I don't put it past him at one point. Maybe you look up, maybe we jump off of this stream. It's unlikely, Did you turn on Yahoo and said, "Man grows arms back. God is real." You know, so I still maintain the belief that it is possible, and why he doesn't do it is it's in his sovereign will. So so I get it. So I can't pretend to understand specifically what you're going through because I am not autistic, and I don't have that. So you have my sympathies, brother, on that. But I am, like I said, glad that you are in a much better place. Um, where do you want to go from here? You want to keep going?
Yeah, so that would lead to, because there were a few things that you said that I wanted to bring up with. One was that you said we should believe in Christianity because he's demonstrated himself, or God has demonstrated himself to be true, or something along those lines.
Yeah.
And that part I'm interested in because I don't see any evidence for Christianity. I don't see any reason to believe Christianity is any more true than Hinduism or Buddhism or Islam or Jainism or Harry Potter. To me, it seems like they're stories that have been come up with by humans, but there's no way to differentiate those stories from just imagination. There's no way to differentiate imagination from reality.
Okay. Well, the difference is the main difference. Well, it starts with first, does God exist? That's the first thing. I mean, so then you go from does God exist to okay, now we have all these different religions that say that their God or you know, their plural gods is the truth. So now it becomes what is the evidence to distinguish what is the truth. I do believe that truth, by definition, is exclusive. I don't believe so. Either there is a God or there isn't, and either Jesus is the true God, the part of the Trinity, or it's not. Like I don't believe in a whole bunch of things lead to the same.
Relativism,
Huh?
relativism, where there's like multiple truths. Yeah,
Yeah, I don't. I believe that relativism is just been very detrimental to our culture as a whole, beyond religion. When we start getting into my truth and other, no.
yeah, I would agree. So I'm a fan of logic, the laws of logic. A
Yes,
is A, truth is truth. There's no like both A and B at the same time. That doesn't make any sense.
absolutely. Now you may have paradoxes where I'm a father and I'm a son, and I'm not contradicting because I'm the son of my mother and I'm the father of my kids. But if I'm the father of myself, therefore, then that becomes a contradiction and it's just not true. So concerning is there a God? That's where we start first before we get into Jesus. Does God exist? And I think that I believe that when I say He's demonstrated Himself, I believe that we find the deepest answers to the four what I believe are deepest questions that we have in the fact of there being a true living God, which I do believe, Jesus is His Son and everything like that. And those are: where do we come from? What's our origin? What is our purpose? Where do we get our morals from? What's our destiny? I believe like those are for me, I think those are the four deepest questions. And I believe God has demonstrated, has answered those questions through where do we come from? That would be, which you are very familiar with, Tom, because you wouldn't have had me on here if you weren't. Yeah, the cosmological argument. What is purpose? That would be the teleological argument. Where do we get our morals from? The moral argument, and then what our destiny is. So let me read you something real quick. Like I said, I am a pastor. You invited me on, so you're going to get scripture. So Paul says in Romans chapter 1, he says, I'm reading from the ESV version. He says, where are we at? Where is it? Okay, we're going to bear with me. I'm going to read a couple of, here it is. Here we go. Romans 1, verse 18 through verse 20. It says, for the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men, who by their unrighteousness suppress the truth. For what can be known about God is plain to them, because God has shown it to them. For his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power, his divine nature, has been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world in the things that have been made. So he's talking about creation. And it says, so they are without excuse. So, that I guess that would bring us to the cosmological and the teleological arguments for God. When I say he's demonstrated himself, you are familiar with the cosmological argument, right?
Yes, quite
Yes.
familiar.
And I know you're just waiting to jump in and tear it all apart, but that's okay. We're going to go for it anyway. I like having a good time. So just so we can laugh and have fun, and I'm cool with it as long if you're cool with it. All things have a beginning, I believe. I do believe that all things have a beginning, and if everything has a beginning, then if something has a beginning, it has a cause. The universe has a beginning, therefore the universe has a cause. It wasn't until the 20th century where science caught up with theologians and agreeing that the data supports that the universe has a beginning. So again, if it has a beginning, then it has a cause. Some would say it could be caused by other things, not God, but it doesn't negate the argument, because what the other things are, ultimately there has to be something that ends up being the cause of everything. And you can have a personal cause, or you can have a scientific cause. But in order to have a scientific cause, you need matter. You're going to need energy. You'll need space. You'll need time, which those also had a beginning themselves. So something had to cause space, time, matter, and energy. So I believe there was a personal cause that transcended space, time, and matter and energy, that caused space, time, matter, and energy. And so you can't have that cause be made of space, matter, time, and energy, because if it was made of space, matter, time, and energy, then it wouldn't be making space, time. It would be illogical. So it would have to transcend space, time, matter, and energy. So the original cause, the first cause, is personal. It's personal. That's how it was a choice. So that would be an overview of God has demonstrated. Just the fact that we exist, is, and the design that comes, which brings you to the teleological argument. Teleology referring to explanations that deal with design and purpose. So it claims that the appearance
Well,
of design.
before we get to that one, let's
Okay, go
just
ahead.
stick with the cosmological for a minute. So,
Okay, go ahead.
first thing, in physics, energy did not have a cause, so energy cannot be created or destroyed. First law of thermodynamics. So energy is uncreated by definition in physics. Secondly, there are things that have no cause. In physics and philosophy, we reject the principle of sufficient reason. The principle of sufficient reason is the thing that says everything must have a cause. In physics, the consensus is there are random uncaused events, and that's been demonstrated in physics through the delayed quantum eraser something, I forget what it's called. But the consensus in physics is randomness is actually a thing. There's literal randomness actually happens. But even if all that was true, let's say that whatever the universe is, it's made of something else. We can grant that. We think that space and time are emergent. So the consensus in physics is space and time do have a beginning and is caused by something else, but they think it's caused by a quantum field. They don't think it's caused by a God. And
Well, what
so
caused the quantum field?
nothing. It's like a necessary being. It's uncaused, uncreated,
To me,
but it's not conscious.
that's illogical. It actually, in my opinion, did I cut you off? Go ahead, finish. I cut you off, and I'll come back to that.
Oh, sure. So the argument here is that why should we think that a consciousness was the origin and not a quantum field was the origin? Because all examples of consciousness we have are a result of matter, energies. Like if we have a hierarchy of stuff, we have like physics, chemistry, biology, brains, consciousness. And so all examples of consciousness we have are very far down the line. There's no examples of consciousness before physics in quantum fields, no examples of that.
Mm.
And so saying that consciousness or a conscious decision was the first thing to cause the universe doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. It's kind of like saying a pineapple created the universe. Pineapples are a thing that's very far down the line. It's like it's after physics, it's after chemistry, it's after biology. It's very far down the line. To say that a pineapple existed before the universe doesn't make any sense, because pineapples only come about from like physical interactions in biology and all this stuff. And so the same thing would apply to consciousness. The
Yeah.
only examples of consciousness we have are at the exact same stage as pineapples. They're a result of physics creating chemistry, creating biology, creating biological organisms. And so to say that one of those things at that level was before the Big Bang, before space time, doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. But to say quantum fields were before space time, that makes a lot of sense because we've done tests like the Casimir effect that show quantum fields actually exist in a way that is beyond our space-time boundaries. And so we have lots of evidence that quantum fields can cause our universe, but we have no evidence that minds can exist outside of our universe. So to think that the origin of our universe was a mind doesn't seem to make sense, whereas to think it's a quantum field seems to make a lot of sense, which is why it's the consensus in physics.
Okay, so I would push back on that and say, first of all, let me tell you, I did misspeak when I said energy. I just meant to just say space, time, and matter. Energy was not supposed to be in that. You were right on that. So, thank you for holding me to that. It was just those three. The second thing is I disagree with, because again, what would cause the what do you call it? The
quantum field.
Because to be very fair to you, I've definitely not done any study on the quantum field. So if you ask me to tell you and go deep into that, but my pushback, I'm theorizing now, would be in order to run these tests, you needed apparatuses and machines, and you needed stuff that existed to run these tests, right? You needed stuff that is in our reality to run the test. So to know. Okay, so you try to track with me here when I say this. When we talk about near-death experiences and people being brain dead, there's nothing there, but they can tell you what was being said over here in the other room on the other side of the hospital. They can tell you where there's a shoe on the roof because they were, but the instruments, they were pronounced dead. That shows. Hey, I can send you. You can make that look.
Oh no, I'm very familiar with all of those. So I've read Craig Keener's book on miracles, this 500-page tome. I know all of those examples by heart.
Understand. Okay, so for me, the mind does not need the body to exist. To me, that is proof that mind does exist outside of this physical shell that we're in. And so it takes, to me, more faith to believe that the quantum field, is that what you said?
Yep.
Would cause all of this. And then I would still have the question, what caused the quantum field? Because with all of our tests, again, you have to have things. You have to have the lab. You have to have the this. You have to that. You have to have the funding. You got all these things to run the tests that exist. So you're running but there aren't any tests from things that don't exist that prove that things come from nothing. Or so again, the quantum
just to clarify, no physicist thinks that something came from nothing. That's not a thing. No physicist thinks that. Not even Lawrence Krauss, who wrote a book on it, he does not think that. It's just a language game. So I agree that the apparatus, the machine that we built to run the tests, definitely is in the universe. But that doesn't mean the thing it's testing for is a thing that didn't exist prior to the universe. So
but it doesn't
what it's measuring. Well, so what the apparatus is, what they do is they create a vacuum or close to a vacuum, put two metal sheets really close to one another, and then see if virtual particles popping into existence from the quantum field push the things together. Mm-hmm. And so the apparatus clearly exists in the universe, and the virtual particles interacting with those exist in the universe. But the point is that it can measure that there is something else there that is causing these things to come into existence in a vacuum. So there's a vacuum, no matter, energy, or the smallest we can amount, and things pop into existence. They just show up and push stuff together. And so the argument there is that we predicted this would happen. We said there's a hypothesis that there are these quantum fields that cause these interactions, which cause virtual particles to pop into existence, and we can measure them if we do this experiment. We did the experiment, we measured the virtual particles. Therefore, we can conclude that the quantum fields exist. And so the experiment obviously is something that exists in the universe, but the thing it's testing for doesn't. It creates stuff in the universe, and we can't see we can't measure quantum fields. It's not like a quantum field ruler that we can just touch the quantum fields, but we can see their effects in the universe. And
Right.
so that's really good reason to conclude quantum fields exist. That's why it's the consensus in physics.
The point is,
Um,
but I think it feels like you're missing the point that you needed something to create that quantum field. You needed, you needed material. Am I right or wrong?
No, so we don't measure the quantum field. We measure the effects of the quantum field. So virtual particles are things that are created by quantum fields. The quantum field wasn't created. The virtual particles were created by the quantum field. So we're looking for the virtual particles as they are created by the quantum field. The quantum field isn't created. It's there. It's eternal. It's never not been there. It's the fundamental thing that all reality is made of. And it creates virtual particles, and we can
Ah,
measure the virtual particles.
so you do believe in something. So explain the quantum field for me before I don't want to presuppose I have this right. The quantum field it's spaceless, timeless, and matterless itself.
Yes.
Okay, so we do agree that there's something must be spaceless, timeless, and matterless. Where we disagree is on what that is.
Yep.
Now, and you believe that the quantum field is uncaused.
Yes.
I believe that God is uncaused. So it's just which one is it?
Yes.
Is it the quantum field or is it God?
Yep.
And I get it. So I see where there is we have common ground, and then I can see where we verge and we go in different directions. Okay.
And that's where the brain question comes in. So now the question is once we agree that there's some fundamental nature to reality, there's something there that is fundamental to all reality, could be a God, could be a quantum field, and which one is the better explanation?
Mm-hmm.
And from my perspective, it seems like there's no evidence minds exist outside of brains. There's lots of evidence quantum fields exist outside of space and time. And so that's the better explanation. And you brought up the out of body experiences,
Yeah.
which are not accepted by neurology, cognitive science, psychology, or any brain science that exists. So if you look at Craig Keener's work and you look at the polls of all of the different scientists, pretty much nobody thinks that that's evidence that the mind is outside of the brain. Like all of those data have been gone through. Like the one about the red shoe one was explained because when you're unconscious, even though you don't have a conscious state, your brain is still functioning. Your brain is still processing data. Even when your heart stops, the biology in your brain is still moving.
Mm-hmm.
The chemical in the cell that creates energy is called ATP. ATP causes cells to fire, like neurons, and cells to move. So they're still moving even when your heart isn't moving. All of the cells in your body, the bacteria, it's still doing stuff. It hasn't stopped when your heart stops. And so when you lose conscious suddenly, the pathways in the brain are kind of like pipes. And so the pathways are left open in whatever configuration they were in when your brain magically shut off or spontaneously shut off. And so if you're in a conscious state and you suddenly lose consciousness, any of the sensations that your eardrum has, that your fingers have, that your neurons have, will go into your brain and be saved as conscious memory. And
Mm-hmm.
so if you suddenly pass out, like a heart attack, your heart stops and you lose consciousness, but people around you are still talking, those sounds will hit your eardrum, and your eardrum will then send the signal to your brain, and your brain will save it as a conscious memory. And so when you wake up, you can actually remember what people were saying while you weren't conscious, and you'll think it was a conscious experience, something you literally experienced while you were awake. But it wasn't. It was just that's where it got saved in your brain, because that was the last thing that was activated in your brain before you lost consciousness, and that pipeway was just left open. And so the red shoe example is like when someone was on an operating table or outside of consciousness on a like a bed or whatever, hospital bed, and somebody in the hallway says, "Oh, have you guys heard about the red shoe that's across in the thing?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, that's a cool story. There's a red shoe there. It's interesting." And the person in the bed hears that, they can then wake up and remember that, oh, there was a story about a red shoe in a different building that I've never been in, and get the information that way. So that's actually really common. That's not particularly hard to explain.
I think that
Um,
I think nah. Good try, Tom. No.
well, we have lots and lots and lots of examples of this that we can
No,
demonstrate
no,
that this happens.
no. Yeah, but I'll just ask a couple of questions. Is that okay?
Sure.
We're having a good time. We
Yep.
you and me, Tom. You my boy. You my boy. All right. So okay. So how does it explain knowing what somebody said in another house? They're not even at the hospital. How explain how that happens, or even explain, or that, or I'll keep it simple. In the operating room, how they can
The VIN number on top of the ventilator.
oh,
Yeah.
not the VIN. How they can see different things that are happening from. Let's pretend like they were a fly on the wall looking down. So when I'm conscious lying down on the table, I don't have the view of the ceiling. So how are they able to describe things from that point of view in very detail? So I'll keep it there, and then you can, then I'll hear what you have to say if they're in another house or things like that.
Yeah, so on the operating table is pretty easy. If you've ever watched ER or any medical show, you have an understanding of what's going on. And if you're in a dream, that information is placed in your dream. So if you have a dream about being on an operating table, you're seeing what's going on based off of other memories that have similar data. So if you've ever watched an ER show or a surgery on YouTube, you can know what's going on. It's pretty simple. Like operations aren't super complicated. You cut the part open, you suture the part that's missing, you dab the blood. It's all pretty much the same. It's not like there's some super complicated method there, unless they're giving you actual neurological brain states or something, neurological brain positions, then that would be pretty impressive. But if it's just basic medical stuff, that's pretty obvious. Like you could do that right now. You could just guess what's going to happen in a surgery, and you'll be right about 90% of the time because they're
No,
pretty basic.
no, you won't, Tom. Stop it. You act like everybody. You act like
Append-
everybody watching.
pick appendicitis. What are they do? Well, they're going to cut open your abdomen. They're going to go in. They're going to cut open the sides, remove the abdomen,
I'm not talking
clamp
about
the.
that. I'm talking about this nurse came in. You were unconscious when you came in. You were DO. You came in. This nurse came in wearing this particular blah blah with these pants. They reach for this particular thing. I'm talking about those kind
Well,
of. I can send you some of these accounts
that
if you
one's
want
easy because in a
to.
hospital they all wear the same thing. Like there's
No,
literally.
they don't.
Yes, they do. In a surgery room, you're mandated to wear a specific set of scrubs and a specific set of equipment. They're all wearing the same thing. They have to by law. So that one's easy. Um, like it's
Okay,
not like I wore jeans into the operating table. Like, nope, can't do that. You got to wear
very true.
scrubs.
Very true. Very true. But okay, keep going. Keep going. Keep going.
So all of those things, like, and in the surgery table, the same thing happens. Like you can hear conversations going on, and those are again saved to conscious memory in the same way the red shoe one was. So you can hear what the doctors are saying in the same way that the person could hear about the red shoe from in the hallway. Your memory, your experiences of your earlobes vibrating is being saved to conscious memory. And so you can hear conversations of the doctors and actually remember what they said. I've experienced that from being in anesthesia when getting my teeth removed, and I can remember what they were talking about. Again, I wasn't actually conscious. It's just that's how your brain saves the data when you suddenly lose consciousness.
Okay, what about people who aren't in the building and those kind of conversations?
Families and friends are extremely obvious because you know their patterns from being around them enough that you can usually predict what they're saying, and they repeat things quite often. Like in if you've talked to friends and family, you usually come up with the same conversations multiple times. Like you're like, we've already talked about this. I remember you told me this last week. It happens all the time. It's just that humans have a tendency to aggregate towards specific terminology, specific phraseology, specific topics of what they're talking about. And it's pretty easy to guess what they're saying. Also a really common thing that we know about.
I do not agree. But that
Really, like you can't say that your wife hasn't told you the same thing like 6 times and you just kind of like, yeah, honey, that's great. I
I
totally
just told
totally
you she
knew.
is the most wonderful person in the whole world. I'm not getting in trouble. Bring somebody else. Bring somebody else up. No, there's nothing illogical about what you're saying. However, I do believe that there a lot of accounts are more nuanced than that. And there, so do you? Let me ask you this. Let me ask you this. Are you able to concede? Not do you have to believe, but are you able to concede where there are things you cannot explain? You,
Oh,
Tom?
sure, obviously.
Okay, 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 cool, cool. So I just wanted to make sure that we were having a conversation in good faith, and that everything I brought up wasn't gonna be, oh, well, that's easy, you know. but if it's easy to you, then I get it. But
Well,
we
those
disagree.
specific examples are easy because
Definitely
those specific
disagree.
examples have been well studied.
I got you. But there's the other side of it too. There's the other side, and but we didn't come here. I didn't come here prepared to go into it. The only reason I brought that up was the whole mind thing. You know, the mind existing
Yep.
without, and I believe that near-death experiences prove that. So again,
Well,
that's what I believe. I believe.
question about that.
Okay, go ahead.
Why doesn't anybody in like the entire field of neurology, psychology, cognitive science, philosophy of mind, why do none of them agree? Why do all of them say
Well,
the
I
evidence doesn't
don't.
indicate that?
So I haven't done enough study to agree with you to say that none of them agree. So and I'm not saying you're lying, but I would need to see that myself to. So I can't just be like, yeah, well, here's why. But now I can say this on the flip side that we do know on both sides, non-believers and believers. Sometimes we approach things. We are human, and we'll come things with our presupposed biases. And sometimes, even in the fields, I mean, we want to do the best. I'm not accusing people. We want to do the best we can, but sometimes our activism does play a role in our conclusions that we come to. You know what I'm saying? So I'd be curious if I studied this, and I hadn't studied it. I'd be curious to know in these fields what would be the poll of non-believers and believers who are all agreeing on the same thing. You know what I'm saying? I would,
Yep.
yeah, that would be where I would want to know what's going on, and is the ideology a driving force to some of the conclusions that are happening. You know, we are human. It does happen on both sides. It does happen.
I mean, I understand the argument, but I don't think that's a fair argument because in science, the whole point of the scientific method is to overcome biases. The whole point of the methodology of peer review, double-blind peer review, is to eliminate bias and just show what does the data indicate. And so science is the most successful field at eliminating biases of any human enterprise. There's nothing else that works as well to eliminate exactly what you're talking about. So, of every field of humanity, the scientific field is the one that has the least effect of our preconceived biases of anything else. And so, when we're looking at those studies, like the Phil Survey's paper 2020 is one of them. It asks about physicalism, which is the position that consciousness is a product of the brain. I've had on Julian Mussolino, who talked about the consensus of neurologists and the polls of neurology on my channel. He says that there's like none of the ones he works with think that there's a soul. And there are still a lot of Christians. So a lot of Christians are still a large portion of people working in the field. The problem is that the evidence doesn't support it. That's the claim. Because in order to support dualism, you would need novel testable predictions that can be confirmed with some kind of an experiment, whereas naturalism and physicalism have lots and lots of those, and dualism and idealism don't. And so it's not a well accepted position, even from the Christians who are neurologists, don't really accept that as a well supported position. So, like Craig Keener's book and the near death experiences things, there are lots of things we can't explain, and that's true. You're right about that. But the fact that we can't explain something isn't evidence of a different hypothesis. So, say, like, if there's something that happens we can't explain, I don't know, a cup falls over, that's not evidence of fairies. It's just something we can't explain. It could have been the wind. It could have been something we don't know, maybe a quantum field fluctuation. Who knows? But the fact that we can't explain it isn't evidence for any hypothesis. It's just an unknown. And so saying we can't explain something doesn't provide evidence for anything. It's just an unknown. What would count as evidence is saying we have a novel testable prediction of this hypothesis, whether it's God or naturalism, and we're going to predict something we don't know yet and get it right. And then that would be evidence. Just saying we can't explain something wouldn't be evidence.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that. I'm also still. I think you're more because of our probably because of where we differ on the human condition as well. I believe you're more trusting that there isn't preconceived biases that go into some of the. I like, you know, what is it even in the realm of possibility that there have been, you know, and I'm going to get killed in the comment section for this, but it is what it is. But is it in the realm of possibility that there have been tests and different things that have gone on that have been, you know, pushed to the side, not allowed to come out because that would, uh, uh, prove something that we really don't want to prove. So, okay, bottom line. So when we get into, so here's what I believe. Here's what I believe, Tom, to my core. Um, People at the end of the day will not reject Jesus or God on the basis of the lack of evidence. I believe that to the heart of me, it is a heart issue. Why do I believe this? Because as you're aware, growing up a Christian, when you read in Revelation, right, you actually see uh, God judging the earth. It's clear he's there. It's clear he exists. And you see the people on the earth doing this, shaking their fists against it. So what ends up happening is uh, because a lot of Christians, most of us are not studied, and we're not versed in science and mathematics and physics and all that. We've allowed, as Christians, we've allowed ourselves to just really be a dumbed down community. And so when we have good people like yourselves who have really valid questions, we don't have an answer or anything, and so it just goes along with so a person who's a non-believer isn't confronted with what's really going on, which is the heart issue. So I don't know if you're tracking with me. The whole thing about apologetics is not to win a debate and win somebody over to Christ through a debate of, okay, here's the evidence and all that. It is to strip down and get to what's really going on with the person's heart. Because there's a question that I'm going to ask, but I'll ask it a little further down, because ultimately that question is really it really determines what's really going on with the person. Is this really a matter of a person having lack of evidence or the truth or that, or really is it their heart and they just want to live their own life and not be under the authority of something bigger than them? They don't want to submit to something that's bigger than them. They want to make their own decisions. They want to do what they want to do, how they want to do it. They don't want to conform. Ultimately, I believe that that is what is the issue, and that we're using, and rightfully so. When I say we, I mean non-believers, and I'm not a non-believer, but you know what I'm saying. Non-believers are using the lack of evidence or insufficient answers and all that as a wall or protection unconsciously to not deal with what's really going on, which is right in here. Now, if a person truly is a seeker of the truth, I believe that 100%. I know you're gonna be like, whatever. I believe 100% they're going to come to God. I really do. I really do. Because remember, what did I say? What did I say in Revelation? What did I say? Revelation, you've read it. You've read it. God's wrath is being poured down, and the people are still shaking their fist at him, right? So this is not a matter. At that point, it's clear he exists. We're all, everything we're talking about doesn't even matter at that point. Now, are the people at that point coming to him saying, Lord, I accept you? Lord, come into my life? No, they're still in a place of rebellion. So I really believe to the core of me, it's a heart issue at the end of the day. People want to do what they want to do. I believe that. So what would you say to that?
Well, I would say that you can use that justification to justify any position. Say that, why do people reject flat Earth? Well, it's because they're biased. There's all biased, and they just don't want to believe in the flat Earth because they don't want to accept that flatness is just superior to them, to their roundness or whatever. You can always use personal motivational bias in order to try to justify the rejection of a position, but that's an appeal to motive fallacy. It's like, that could be the case, or it could be the evidence just doesn't support your position. And which is more likely? In the context of a scientific inquiry, whichever hypothesis makes novel testable predictions is the one that we believe. And so it doesn't make sense to say that everyone is biased in the case of science or neurology, that there
I
isn't.
implied that. I apologize. That wasn't trying to be the implication. I was saying is there possibilities that those kinds of people exist?
Oh, well, sure. There's definitely, obviously, there's going to be some, but that's going to be the small minority.
But
Like
I
if you're
don't know.
looking at,
I don't know that like that. Have you done polls? You know what I'm saying? Have you polled the whole field of neurology? You know what I'm saying? We don't know.
Polled? Well, so that's something that we can be pretty much we do know. So it's like how many people are rejecting that the world is round because they
Mhm.
just don't like roundness. Like it's a small number. It's not going to be
Yeah,
like all of NASA isn't going to be biased that oh the world is flat and we just have to fight against the flatness theory. Like no,
right.
they just believe because it's the evidence. They don't care. They don't care what the shape of the world is. And the same thing applies to God. Like most scientists don't care. They're just investigating truth. They're not like investigating in order to disprove God. They're investigating science because they care about science. The vast majority of scientists aren't trying to disprove God. They're trying to investigate the field that they're passionate about, regardless of what the conclusion is. They don't care. They don't care if God's there or not. They care about what does the evidence indicate. And so saying that, well, they're just rejecting the evidence of God because they're biased doesn't make any sense because what they really care about is investigating the scientific field that they're trying to discover, not caring what the conclusion is. They don't care. They're just trying to discover things because they get famous regardless of what's true. If they publish a paper that found Noah's Ark, they would get super famous. They're not going to get rejected for that. What matters is can they make a discovery that can progress the field? And if they can, they get recognition, and that's what they're going for. Whether or not God exists is just irrelevant to the questions. And so to try to assume that they're biased because they want to reject God doesn't make any sense in the context of how
No,
science works or what scientists are doing.
no. I'm saying that. Okay, again, well, pretend hypothetically speaking, the events in Revelation take place,
That would be
and
evidence of Christianity, 100%. If all of the Christian or a large portion of the Christian population magically disappeared and their clothes were left on the ground, that would be great evidence of Christianity.
I
Yes.
got you. So again, why would the people still be not falling on their faces asking for forgiveness? Why are they still rebelling? You know what I'm saying? That I'm talking about the human condition now. Why are people rebelling? Okay, um, um, we talk about the evidence of the resurrection and everything. The empty tomb. Why? Uh, I guess you may question the historicity of the empty tomb. I'm not sure. Um, um, but why? Again, is there not something that says I want to live my life? Okay, so let me ask you straight up, because we can go round and round in circles. We can talk about the. I really wanted to get into the moral argument. I think that's so fun. Um, but at the end of the day, Tom, my question to you, as a brother in, as your brother in our human race, who I love, Tom, I love you. You're my brother. I do,
I love you too.
and
Please
that's real.
introduce me to hot blondes.
What'd you say?
Please introduce me to hot blondes. Get your wife to hook me up with her friends. Come on, let's do this.
Do you see this face? Do you think I know a lot of hot blondes? What community do you think I live in? But anyway, my question to you: were if Christianity, at the end of the day, were proven 100% to you, you saw the evidence, and you saw, and everything lined up to everything that you wanted, and met all your criteria, hypothetically speaking, you know, would you be a Christian?
Well, I believe God existed. That's kind of like the standard.
No, that's not. No, no. Would you
Well, so
submit
like
your
evidence of something. Well, there's a difference between evidence being true and then joining an ideology or something. So like I can
so if,
accept that the world is, let's say if there was evidence the world was flat, I could say yeah, the world's flat, but I wouldn't be a flat earther. I wouldn't join the flat earth ideology.
yeah,
And
so
so
okay, go ahead.
evidence is only about is the proposition true? And so if there is evidence Christianity was true, I'd be like, yeah, Christianity is true. And then whether or not I would worship the Christian God is a different question. That's a moral question. And morally, I would not worship the Christian God. But that's
Exactly.
I would still grant he's true. I would still grant the evidence because
I
that's
got
like a
you.
scientist. If there was evidence, they're like, yeah, it's true. It's fine.
So you've proven my point. It's a heart issue. So because the question would be, why morally, if the evidence was there, why morally would you not give yourself to me? You knew, yes, he created me. Yes, he says he's the way, the truth, and the life. There's no doubt. I'm still not going to give my life to him. Why?
Drowning babies, lots of drowning babies.
No, I'm not talking. I'm not talking. See, now we're going into outliers. So, and when I say outliers, I mean you don't find any evidence in here that God said you must go drown babies. Right now, you've had a
Oh no,
lot of.
no. So your question was is why wouldn't I worship God, right?
Uh huh.
And the reason I wouldn't worship God is because he drowned babies in the global flood area. He mass murdered Sodom and Gomorrah, turned a woman to salt. He's done a lot
Mhm.
of evil things. And so it's not that he commands you to drown babies, it's that he has drowned babies. So I see
Okay,
him as immoral.
so you're saying, okay, so you're, and how do you come to the conclusion that your standard of morality is what God should be judged on?
So I base my morality on the moral intuition, moral progress, the principles that describe it. And so I think that there's lots of evidence that my view of morality is correct. And I believe it is more correct than drowning babies. So if you have to say that if we grant Christianity is true and you want to worship Jesus, you have to grant that it's okay for him to drown babies, then I'd say that that's a morally wrong position. And that's why I wouldn't worship God, because I think if I have to accept that God drowning babies is moral, then I think that that position is immoral.
Okay, but that's based upon, but what is establishing your morals? It's your opinion. That would be your opinion. That, like, if so you, first of all, you need to, you need, I like how Frank Turek, have you heard of Frank Turek?
Yep. We talked
Yeah.
with him, I met him.
Oh, okay, great, great. I like how he says it. You have to steal from God to slap God. You got to climb up on his lap to slap his face. Like, you're basing your morality based upon the standard that God himself has set. Now, we can go through the different things in the word of God and talk about the reasons of why God chose to do the different things he did. Now, he is God, he's the creator, and he has the right to do it what he wants. But for you to call it immoral is based upon a standard that he set. So, but you're saying you don't believe in him. So if you don't believe in him, where are you getting your morals from to even judge him by? Especially if he's been proven to be, in this hypothetical situation, if he's been proven to exist.
Well, proving he exists doesn't prove he's moral. So I think that like God could exist, like there could be a God and the God could just be evil. Or God could exist and he could be deistic, so he doesn't care. Or God could exist and he could be like multiple gods. And so the fact that God exists doesn't prove his nature is a particular way. And so I think that we have very good evidence that drowning babies is 100% always wrong. If you're drowning babies and you could do otherwise but didn't, you're immoral. And I think there is a very strong basis of evidence for that.
What is the evidence outside? So outside, again, outside of of a of something that transcends human nature, outside of that, what is the adequate explanation for morality?
Well, there's could be lots, but you don't need to start with ontology. So you start with epistemology, like if we see rocks falling, we don't ask, well, what is the fundamental nature? You must understand gravity first. Like, no, we don't start with gravity. We start with rocks fall. What is the pattern and how they fall? What is the rate? Can we describe that with a principle or a mathematical description? And then we start to try to infer what it's made of. But the first thing you see is if rocks fall at this rate and say God exists and he says it falls at a different rate, say gravity is 3 times faster or something, we're like, we can measure like, nope, it's this rate, then we can say, nope, God's wrong. It's factually wrong. So if we have evidence of some phenomenon and it works at some particular example, like a rock falling at rate 1, and then God disagrees with that, or the Bible disagrees with that and says something different, then we can say, no, I can test this. This seems to be the case. And so I would disagree with the Bible because it's wrong in this case. And so in the case of morality, I, based on my understanding of morality, I see the case of babies drowning. See, that's clearly immoral. And so if the Bible disagrees with that, I can say, okay, the Bible's wrong. The Bible is immoral here because I can clearly see drowning baby immoral. And I mean, you can disagree with that and you can say that I don't think, or that you don't think God drowning babies is immoral, but then it's up to each individual to test the evidence for themselves. Which do they think is a more moral system? Is it more moral to say, nope, you should never drown babies, or it's okay for God to drown babies? And if someone agrees with my view that it's always moral for God to drown, for anybody to drown babies, then they're going to say, yeah, I think God's immoral. And so the test here is really more to say which is a more moral system or a better system. And you have to essentially just use your own intuitions here. And if you see that you think drowning babies is always wrong and God drowns babies, then you're probably not going to worship God.
Well, so you would agree that the reason why drowning babies is wrong is because babies have intrinsic value, right? Because they're human.
Well, they're conscious, they're not human.
Okay, we're not going down there.
Well, yeah. So I value all things with consciousness, not just humans, but yeah, they're conscious.
Okay, so but we agree that they have intrinsic value, babies, right? Okay, so where do they get their intrinsic value without God? So if we're all just matter and energy and all this was mindless and everything, and if a cockroach dies on the ground right now, that we would consider that being it was crawling and it just died. You won't see a whole bunch of cockroaches coming and having a funeral, and we certainly won't have a funeral for that cockroach. So what? Let me finish. Let me finish what I'm saying. So we don't.
Elephants do. Elephants do that.
Okay, well that's one, but that's one. How many species are in on this planet? So the intrinsic value that we have, if this has just been a mindless process to how we got here, nothing deeper than a grain of sand compared to a human being. Where do we get that? Where's an adequate explanation for the intrinsic value that you're placing on the babies who you're saying that it's immoral to drown babies? And I agree with you, because we can deal with we can deal with Noah's Ark and all that stuff. But before the reason why that is so upsetting to you is because of the intrinsic value that you have on the babies, because in your words, they're conscious, right? So where do they get this intrinsic value from if everything is just a mindless process of evolution?
Well, so there's 2 points there. One is that there are alternative explanations of morality. Like we can say it's a platonic object, it's an a priori abstract, it's a moral naturalistic law of the universe kind of a thing. Most philosophers are atheists, 70%-ish, and most philosophers believe in moral realism, objective morality. So even though most philosophers are atheists, they still believe in objective morality. You don't need a God for that. But that's a separate issue to um, why we would reject God here. We don't need an alternative explanation of morality to know God is wrong. Like if I said, let's suppose we didn't know what caused gravity. We had no idea what caused gravity.
Mm-hmm.
And the Bible said God caused gravity, and God caused gravity at a rate of 10 times 9 to the 8 meters per second squared. Now we can measure it and say it's not 10 times 9 to the 8 meters per second squared. It's just 9.10, or it's just 9.8 times meters per second squared. And so the number is wrong. So even if God claims to explain morality and we have no idea what caused morality, we can still see that's wrong. That number that they said is wrong. That is incorrect. And so we can do the same thing without knowing what caused morality. We can still say drowning babies is wrong. We can use that as a data point and say that God is drowned babies, God is wrong, even if we don't know what the ultimate cause is. Now we can still say there are lots of possible ultimate causes. I believe it's a moral law of physics, but it's a different question. We can still say it's wrong to drown babies without knowing what that is.
So I respectfully disagree with that, because without something that's transcendent beyond human nature, it's strictly just your opinion. If it's your opinion, because Hitler thought he was right. Hitler thought he was right, but he was objectively wrong. How do we know he was objectively wrong? Because the moral law is here. You've heard this argument. You understand this argument, that if there is an objective moral law, there must be an objective moral law giver, and something beyond you and I that transcends us. Other than that,
we're having side arguments in the chat. Me and Digital Gnosis are yelling at each other about the quality of evidence. So,
okay, no problem. So J.L. Mackey, you know J.L. Mackey?
Yeah.
Yeah. His quote is, if there are objective moral values, they make the existence of God more probable than it would have been without them. Thus, we have a defensible argument for the morality to the existence of God. So are we here, or are you doing the chat? I mean, I just want to make sure. Okay.
Paying attention. So
okay.
what about J.L. Mackey's arguments?
So I'm saying even he conceded that without the existence of God, it makes the moral object. Think about Nietzsche. What did
God
Nietzsche?
Is dead.
Yeah. What he said? Might makes right, right? And then you had the trial in 1924. Those two followers of Nietzsche that killed the 14-year-old guy, and their defense by ACLU lawyer Clarence Darrow argued that due to evolution, they were behaving according to their prior physical factors. They didn't have any free will in their actions, and therefore they couldn't be condemned by them. And he literally said, is he talking about one of the defendants? Is he to blame for his mission perfect? So that was the argument. If there's no God, if there's something we don't have free will. If there's no God, because we're mindless. Let me finish. Because we're mindless, everything. We're just going with our instincts. We don't have intrinsic value, and it's this. If again, you haven't answered the question. I asked the question, and you went here, but you didn't answer the question. Where do we get our intrinsic value from if there is nothing that transcends our human nature to give it to us?
Okay, so I did answer that. I actually said that there are multiple candidate explanations other than a God, like a
Well,
platonic object.
what are they?
Platonic objects, an a priori abstract, a law of physics, moral naturalist law of physics. There are lots of different alternative explanations for what grounds objective morality other than God. That's why I mentioned the philosophers. Most philosophers are atheists from the Phil Survey's paper 2020, but
Mm-hmm.
most philosophers believe in objective morality without God. So they believe in alternative explanations of morality, and it's actually the majority view that there are alternative explanations of morality other than a God. We don't agree with Mackie or Nietzsche. Like, that's not a thing. We agree there is objective morality and you don't need a God for that. Essentially, even the Christian philosophers agree you don't need a God for that. It's a very strange thing that like Frank Turek and the apologists think that it's possible when the vast majority of Christian philosophers agree that there are other alternative explanations of morality. They're just not very common in like today's academic or in popular culture. So there's pretty much agreement in philosophy. Yes, there are alternative explanations of objective morality without a God. One of them would be moral naturalism. That's my preferred view, moral naturalism. You can Google like the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy on moral naturalism if you want to read more about it. There are lots of different potential explanations of objective morality and objective values without a God. I like the law of physics version. I think it's morality is a law of physics like any other law of physics. That's my view. And but again, that's a separate issue to the fact that you can say, even if you don't know what that is, even if you don't claim to know that this is the correct objective truth of morality, you can still pick a particular example of something that you think is very good example of something that's immoral and say, if Christianity disagrees with this one thing, then you have a good reason to reject Christianity. Like if Christianity said that 1 + 1 = 7, you'd be like, nope, it equals 2. Like 1, 2. Okay. And so if you
Gotcha.
have a really good example of something that you think is true, even if you don't know what grounds that, you can still reject a different ideology which rejects whatever that example is. And those are two different topics. So I'm happy to say there is objective morality. It's grounded in moral realism, but you don't need that to reject Christianity.
Okay. So going back to the drowning babies thing, if and I'm just asking questions. Um, what is that? If we have intrinsic value,
So intrinsic means it's in us without any condition, and so if it's intrinsic, then we don't need a God for it.
I don't necessarily agree with that, but I appreciate that. Who wrote that?
Digital Gnosis. He's another
Hey,
YouTuber.
Hey, they're nice people.
Yes, he's very nice.
Okay. Not. Hey, I like that. I like the quote. I don't agree with it, but I do like the quote. Thank you. So, how long do we have left, Tom?
I've got a while actually. It's pretty much up to you because I have until I think 3:30, another hour till I got to go bike ride.
Okay, what time is it on my end? This has been fun.
We've been going for an hour and 20 minutes.
Okay, cool. Maybe about 15 more minutes and we wrap it up. Is that okay?
Cool.
Okay. So going to the drowning babies thing, right? So again, here's where I stand on this. I am finite. Would you agree you're finite?
Yes.
Limited. You're limited.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
I don't know literally everything. I'm not all powerful.
Huh?
Yeah, I'm not omniscient and omnipotent. No.
Okay, yeah. If you were, you'd have that hot blonde right now, right?
Yep, that is true facts. True
That
facts.
is true facts. Amen. All right. So, with that said, what does the data say? How much percentage of the I want to be right on this. The human brain do we use?
At any given instance, like it's a smaller percentage, but in like So there's the statistic that we only use 10% of our brain. That's false. 100% false. That is not true. It is fake statistic,
Mhm.
fake data.
Yeah,
We
so I'm
do
asking,
use
what is it?
so we do use the vast majority of our brain, just not at any given second. So because different parts of our brain fire at different given instances, and if we're using a large percent of our brain at once, it's called epilepsy. So epileptics use like 90% of their brain when they're having an epileptic seizure,
That's
but
crazy.
when normal human being, only a very small percent of your neurons are firing at any given second, which is a good thing because otherwise we'd have an epileptic seizure.
You have a seizure. Okay. So we can agree that we use a small percentage on an average. We're using a small percentage of our brain, right?
Yes,
Okay.
like in any given instance,
At any
which
given time. Yeah. Okay. So finite, we're not even using our full capacity of our brain, right? So we don't
sure,
know, just like you said, we don't know everything, we don't have it all that stuff. If an
sure.
all powerful, all loving God exists who made a decision that seemed in our eyes immoral, if they do exist and they are proven to be all powerful, all knowing, all loving, not based upon what you think loving is, because remember, they're the ones who are all powerful. They're the ones
Wait,
who
so
are.
just to clarify, if there is a way to prove they were the instantiation of objective morality, so that would be more than just proving he exists. You'd have to be able to objectively demonstrate morality was true with some kind of novel testable prediction, and the other moralities would false. Then that would indicate that his morality would be true for sure.
Absolutely. And if that God still decided because they had their sovereign reasons to do what they did in Noah's Ark, would you have the humility to concede, I don't know everything, and I trust that the reason that this God made the decision to do this, I trust them because I know that it's been proven to me that they are objectively moral, even though that decision in my limited eyes, in my finite perception of things, seems extremely immoral and wrong. Would
Yeah,
you have?
yeah. So if you could prove that there was one particular objective morality and that existed and the others were wrong, then I'd have to grant that.
Okay,
But that's
good.
like saying if you can prove that drowning babies is moral,
No,
which is very
no, no,
I
no,
mean,
no, no, no,
that's
no,
what you said. God
no.
has the right to drown babies.
It's contextual. You keep saying drowning babies, but you are leaving out a whole bunch of what's going on the world, and you know the story of Noah's Ark, and
Yeah,
all you're focused on is drowning babies. There's a
right.
whole bunch of other stuff going on at the same time. You do realize that the people were sacrificing those same babies on the bronze altar to Molech, and so you do realize other things
Yep,
were going on
yep,
at the same
yep.
time, right?
So one group of people is sacrificing some babies, therefore God's going to sacrifice all the
No,
babies.
no, no, no. I'm saying you're still leaving out all of context. Remember, and then the question you have to answer this time: what happened to the babies when they died?
Well, they drowned. So what happened after is
What
kind of less
happened?
important.
Again, remember, we're operating in a world where God exists and where you spiritually exist after you live. So
Well,
according to that,
so that's a good example, but I wanted to pick up on that. So like if I punched you in the face and then gave you $1 million, does that make it moral that I punched you in the face?
it's not apples to apples. No, I would take that $1 million, but that's not apples to apples.
Well, that's the point is like doing a wrong thing or a bad thing
Well,
doesn't
that would be to me personally because we watch people punch people in the face for $1 million every week when we watch the UFC. So,
right.
and are they morally, they don't believe that they're doing anything moral to each other or that something immoral is being done to them and they're getting that money, so we see this all the
That's right.
time.
They consent. They're consenting adults. They can
Right.
consent. So if the babies consented to being drowned, then it would be fine. But babies can't consent because they're babies, and I don't think they would have consented to being drowned. So
How do you
if
know that?
God,
So if
they're babies.
no, hear me. If babies could consent, I can't believe we're going down this. People in the comment section, don't look at me like I'm crazy. All right, Tom brought this up. All
If babies could consent, come on.
right? If babies could consent, and they knew. Listen to this. You got to include this. And they knew they were going to be in paradise from that moment on. Do you think that would be a problem? Remember, this is the world we're operating in, right? You can't negate that part. You can't negate that part. So we believe that ultimately any baby that was, quote, drowned by God and choked out by God from Tom is in his presence in paradise, which is a far better place than what they were receiving at that time.
Well, so
So,
let's go with your example here. So let's say babies could consent.
okay.
If I say we'll just give you as an example. You were the baby and you have a fully adult conscious mind, so you can give consent. And I give you the option of firing squad or the gas chamber. Now you can consent to either one,
Mhm.
but that would make me immoral, right? The moral thing to do would just be to give you the $1,000,000. It wouldn't be say, take the firing squad, then give you $1,000,000. Just be to give you the $1,000,000. If I make you choose first, you have to choose firing squad or gas chamber, and then I'll give you the $1,000,000. That's more immoral than saying I'll just give you the $1,000,000, right?
Yeah. However, again, the reason why I keep saying it's not apples to apples, there was a gene pool problem going on at that time too. You know this. You know this. There was more to it than what was going on. So we can get it. There's a lot more going on. What as the word says, the man that it was corrupted. The flesh was corrupted. Remember. So put yourself in my situation. Put yourself in my shoes for a minute. Take the Tom atheist hat off. Come over to my belief real quick, and I'm gonna put mine on. I'm gonna come to yours. It's gonna be fair. He needs proof or drown.
So it's a question that Pine Creek asks. So if you can, Pine Creek he's not as nice as Digital Gnosis, but he's an
Okay.
atheist and he question. So if you're interested to go on his channel sometime, he would ask you this dilemma. But that's for another time. Keep
Okay.
going.
Okay. So, what was I saying?
There were other things going on.
There are other things going on. Okay, so if you remember in Genesis 5, which I think is awesome. Have you read the genealogy of Genesis 5, Adam and Noah?
No, I don't have it memorized.
Okay, so here's I'm gonna set up where I'm going through this genealogy, right? So remember the Bible's transliterated, right? So every word in English is going to mean something different, and depending on the root of each word. So you have Adam. Adam means man, right? He had Seth. Seth being. Have you heard this before?
Seth, I've heard what? Seth? What
Have you
about
heard
Seth?
what I'm presenting? I don't want to be redundant to you.
Maybe, I'm not sure. What are you presenting?
Okay, so you have Adam, right?
Yeah.
Means man. You have Seth, means appointed. I'm trying to go through this quick.
Oh, were the names add up to Jesus or something?
Well, they don't add up, not in this one, no, but they do add up to something. I'm going to show you, and then I'm setting up what's going on. What
Gotcha.
when we get to Noah. So then you have Enosh, which means mortal or frail. It's from the root word Anash, which means incurable. That's where we get that from. You have Kenan, which means sorrow or dirge or elegy. Then you have Mahalalel. You have Mahala, which means the blessed and or praise, and then you have the word El, which is God. So Mahalalel, the blessed God. And then you have Jared. Jared means shall come down. Shall come down. Based on the root from that. You can look all this up yourself. Then you have Enoch. Enoch means teaching or commencement. And then you have Methuselah, meaning his death shall bring. So the flood didn't come until Methuselah died, because that was the prophecy over his life, that once he died, that's his death shall bring the flood. And then you have the last one, or the last two. You have Lamech, which means where we get the word lament, despairing. And then you have Noah, comfort or rest. So when you have in the genealogy of Genesis 5, now this is in the Old Testament, we and our brother Jews, we don't agree on who the Messiah is, right? But you can look this up in the Old Testament. Man appointed mortal sorrow, the blessed God shall come down, teaching his death shall bring the despairing comfort of rest. So you have the Christian gospel in the genealogy between Adam and Noah through the names, right? So I don't see that as a coincidence. Now, where am I going as it pertains to the Noah? Is there was the plan of redemption, and that the Messiah would come through the line. And I believe that when you get into Genesis, when you have the Nephilim and all that, that there was a gene pool problem, and that flesh had been corrupted. God had to, because that was the enemy's way of trying to thwart the plan of God, knowing that the woman. Remember, he talked to the woman in Genesis. He told her, he said, your seed. Well, we know women doesn't have a seed. So that was an allusion to the virgin birth. Your seed and the enemy, they're going to be at enmity between each other. So I believe that the enemy attacked the gene pool, he attacked the corruption, he attacked humanity. That's where we get the Nephilim and all that stuff. And God had to do something out. Therefore, that's why the earth was flooded. That was part of the reason. It was a big part of the reason why the earth was flooded. So everything in context. This is not just, oh, people are being mean, I'm going to flood. No, I don't like them, I'm going to get rid of them. No, there was a gene pool problem going on as well, which was the bigger issue, because the Messiah was going to be coming through this line and not be corrupted. So now again, remember, that was putting my hat on. That's not telling you to believe that. I'm just giving you more context into the flood, as opposed to God just destroyed everybody because he doesn't like people.
I like the song version. The song version is good. But so the first thing is that the argument, obviously, I don't believe the world flood happened. I think it's fake. I think Noah didn't exist. I think Moses didn't exist. That's the current consensus in history and archaeology, that those were not real characters. But even if we grant they did exist, the argument is that there's a logically possible, just means there are different possible ways the world could be with no contradictions. There's a logically possible world where God could have done something different without drowning everybody. Like, he could have just changed their DNA. So say there was a DNA problem, he could have snapped his fingers and changed the DNA, no DNA problem. He could have protected the babies. He could have teleported the babies to a safe universe where they couldn't have been sacrificed. He could have done a lot of different things that didn't involve mass murder in order to achieve the goal of protecting the planet.
But you're calling it murder. See, again. Okay, so let me give you an example. I believe that God, and I bring these things up because you used to be a Christian, so I don't have a problem bringing up scripture, because you would be.
2 Kings 2:24, my favorite verse.
What is it?
It's the one where God sends the bears to kill the children for making fun of the bald guy.
Oh, we have to talk, Tom. Okay. So the point I'm making is that God, so when he says, Jacob have I loved, Esau have I hated. So we would all agree now, hate is like a bad thing. Like, hate. Oh, God hates? Here's the difference. Because God is pure. God, he is the ultimate good. He's able to hate without all of the negativity and everything that comes along with hate. His hate is different. So when this omnipotent, loving, all-powerful, all-knowing God, who can do anything, makes a decision that seems to go against what we think, I think it's very arrogant of us to say, well, he could have done this, as though we know what it's like to be all-powerful. We know what it's like to be all-loving, or we've talked to somebody who else is all-powerful and all-loving and told you, what, he really made a mistake there, because as another all-powerful, all-loving, everywhere, all-knowing, everything God, I would have done this. I think it's very arrogant of us to say what we would. If I couldn't tell you how a man in China would react to losing his job, I can't tell you how he's going to react, because I'm not him. I don't live in his culture. I don't know their laws. I don't know the pay system. I don't know the availability of other jobs. I don't know where he lives. I don't know his mom. If I can't tell you how he's going to react or what he should do in light of this, then how am I going to be arrogant enough to say what an all-powerful, all-loving, omniscient God should and should not do, when I am not all-powerful, all-loving, all-knowing, or anything myself? I think it's very presumptuous and arrogant. That's my opinion.
Well, all-powerful means, like, the typical definition is able to do any logically possible thing, right? That's the William Lane Craig, Frank Turek definition. And so in order to say what he should have done, we can look at all logically possible worlds. And the way I see it is if God was perfectly moral and all-powerful, the world he should have created is one where it's impossible to force anybody to do anything they don't consent to doing. That would be the perfectly moral world.
But that's
a world where,
based on you. You've admitted that you're not all-powerful. You've admitted you're not all-knowing. You've admitted that you're limited. You're admitted that at any given time in your existence, you're only using a fraction of your brain. So really, does it even matter how you see it?
Yes, because there's no evidence that the Bible is right and I'm wrong. Just saying that I'm limited doesn't prove the Bible right and doesn't prove me wrong. So my view of morality could still be right and the Bible could still be wrong. What we would need is evidence one way or the other. And I think the evidence indicates that my definition of morality, a world where it's impossible to force anyone to do anything they don't consent to doing, is more likely to be right, is more likely to be the correct view of morality than the drowning baby's morality. And so
But
the point here,
what did God make somebody do? Are you saying he made them die? Is that the die, the death part?
that's yes, he made them die. He made them live there. He made them suffer and
But
experience cancer.
but
Well, so just to clarify, in my model, everybody gets their own world and they can design it however they want. So if you don't want cancer, you just put it on the do not apply to my universe list, and it's not going to apply in your universe. So
but
aging, no
and here,
fatness.
here's the part you're not considering. That world did exist, and man chose to do something different. Man chose to eat the fruit. That
Well,
world
Adam and
didn't.
Eve chose that. I didn't choose that.
No, I know you didn't, but I'm saying
So God forced me into this world without my consent. Even if Adam and Eve did choose this world, I didn't. So
what
each human, each individual person should be able to choose what kind of world they want to live in, snap their fingers and go there.
disagree because if you are created, right? Romans 8, what does the thing formed say to what made it? Why did you make me this way? It's like me saying I created paintbrush to paint, but I gave the paintbrush free will and I gave it consciousness, right? And the paintbrush, it's literally designed to paint. And then the paintbrush, I pick it up to go paint, and the paint says, "Don't you use me for painting? I don't want to do that. I should be able to do what I do." The one who made it, anything you create, Tom, anything that you make, you have the right, listen to me, you have the right to do with your creation what you see fit, period.
Well, that's the non-consensual part. That's slavery. So if I created you, I get to do whatever I want with you, kind of a thing.
Uh,
To
yeah,
me, I think that view is not correct. I think the correct view is that every conscious agent should have sovereignty over themselves, and it's immoral or wrong for any conscious agent to force any other conscious agent to do anything, regardless of who created who. Don't think that matters at all.
but again, what is okay? So, all right. So
But
let me.
wait, just to clarify, you said you had 10 minutes. I do want to be respectful of your time.
Oh, see, you got me all wound up now, Tom.
We have to do a second. We have to do a second one sometime.
I think so. This has been really good. I would like to end. Look, you've been more than respectful, man. You've been great. I appreciate you very, very much. I do what I do out of love. There is I don't know if he's still an atheist. I believe he still is. But you know the magician.
Penn and Teller.
You heard what he said, right?
Yep.
And how, as a Christian, how can you say you love if you don't tell me, if you don't show me? So, if you would just indulge me just for a second, just a reminder of you and anybody listen. Oh, thank you, Martin. Part 2, please. Martin, you're a good dude. I appreciate you. If you would indulge me, the message of the gospel is very simple. The good news that Jesus Christ died. He was buried on the third day, rose, and if you believe in that, you will be with him for eternity. And why that's significant is because he took what we deserved and he put it on himself because he wanted to be with us for eternity. So every bad thing that you've ever done, the blood covers it. It's been paid for at the cross. You don't have to be eternally separated from God if you don't want to. That is the good news of the gospel. Thank you, Tom, for allowing me to bring that there. And I appreciate you all. And you got me. I'm gonna do some homework on what do you say, the quantum
Field.
Oh,
Google emergent space time, and that'll get you everything you need.
I'm coming for you, Tom. I'm coming for you, man. But I won't have a hot blonde.
Just banned immediately.
I appreciate what you're doing. I respect what you're doing here, brother.
Yeah, thanks again for coming on. I really appreciate it. It was a great conversation. Do you want to give any links or references where people can find more about your work?
Yes. So the church, anybody looking for, some good sound biblical teaching, you can go to transformationie.org, our YouTube link, Transformation IE. I have a music YouTube. where I do Christian music, and it's official KRD. So it's YouTube.com/official KRD. You can see, my music and everything like that. That's also Facebook. You can find me on there. And yeah, that's pretty much it, Tom. Is there any places you want the people to see you, Tom?
Next to a hot blonde. So anybody out there has any connections, hot blondes, Instagram models, please send them my way. Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Will you
Hook me
get
up.
this
I will
man
move anywhere.
please? We need, yeah. And in 15 years he'll need another one, but at least for now, he'll be out there.
Awesome.
All
Thanks
right.
again for having on. It was great fun, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
You too. God bless you, Tom.